So the recent 2021 Super Bowl was unique in a lot of ways. Unless, of course, you're a Browns fan, then things are the same.
Ah, Jefferson, I know. My hubby is also a long-suffering Browns fan.
I know.
My condolences.
And we still aren't in it. What's a brother got to do to get a Browns in the Super Bowl? Can I tell my Browns joke?
Okay, if you must.
I must. What do Cleveland Browns fans call Super Bowl Sunday?
Passover.
Oh, you've heard it before. Yeah. But we digress. So, like I said, at this year's Super Bowl, which is typically a hot ticket item, it was definitely significantly different. There were less people there. And some of the only 25,000 people, so there are 25,000 people in the stands, were comprised of caregivers. About 7,500 vaccinated healthcare heroes were given free tickets as a gesture of gratitude.
I absolutely love that. And that's what got us thinking about some of the caregivers that we may know closer to home, sometimes in our homes, and what resources might be available to us. So today we have two crazy, amazing humans with us who you are going to love. Leeza Gibbons and Wendy Marantz Levine, who help answer that question in different ways. And wait till you hear about how and why they created their crazy, amazing organizations.
Yeah, because there comes a time in all of our lives when we face devastating loss and when we have to think about taking care of others. I mean, all of us as children were taken care of by our parents, but as we get older, we often need to take care of those who were caregivers to us, right? At some point.
That's right.
And someone else or anyone else in our lives, we might need to step up, but how do we do it?
That's a very good question, Jefferson, because there isn't a manual per se. And
Right?
how do we do it without depleting ourselves so that we have nothing left to give? So that's what today's show is all about.
I want you to feel, I want you to feel something crazy, crazy, amazing.
Today's episode of the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast is brought to you via Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. All episodes are free, so make sure and subscribe today.
Part one, a very good place to start. Welcome to our two-fer of Crazy Amazing Humans with Leeza Gibbons and Wendy Marantz Levine. In today's episode, we're highlighting two guests who have a common experience of a close family member being diagnosed with an illness that spurred them on to create something crazy amazing to help others in similar situations.
That's right. So with us today is Emmy-Award winner Leeza Gibbons, who is an instrumental advocate for healthcare, wellness, and caregiving. A wife, mother, businesswoman, and a New York Times bestselling author. Her books, Take Your Oxygen First, love that book. Take Two, Your Guide to Happy Endings and New Beginnings, and Fierce Optimism, 7 and Winning Big, all underscore her philosophy of work hard and care more.
And I love that.
Right, me too. So Leeza also created the nonprofit Leeza's Care Connection, which offers free services and support to families dealing with the diagnosis of chronic illness or disease.
See, I told you she is pretty amazing, right? And we also have with us Wendy Marantz Levine. Wendy is an attorney who previously worked as Director of Litigation at Bet Tzedek Legal Services, where she spearheaded the International Holocaust Services Justice Network, which organizes attorneys across the world to provide free legal services to thousands of Holocaust survivors. Wendy is also the founder of Beauty Bus Foundation, an innovative nonprofit that delivers loving kindness, support, and compassion to seriously ill patients and their caregivers through beauty services. The Beauty Bus has been highlighted on ABC and NBC News, the New York Times, and NBC's The Today Show, amongst many others. And Los Angeles Magazine named Wendy as one of the 50 women who most impacts Los Angeles.
That is so amazing. You both are amazing. Can't wait to get started. So Leeza and Wendy, welcome to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Wendy's one of my favorite people.
wonderful. Love what you two are doing. And Wendy, it's kind of cool that we have been designated crazy amazing. That's good.
I'm happy to be in any category with you, Leeza, but this is quite an honor, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Me too.
Definitely fun. And we are just so lucky to have you with us today. It is such a pleasure and privilege because I've known both of you personally for so many years, and I literally could not wait to share what you both do for so many people with our audience. So thank you for being here. And I guess let's start at the beginning.
A very good place to start. Sorry.
We don't have to sing, do we? Oh, please.
Leeza, you'd be good at that, I'm sure. Something tells me. So, it's great because we're always interested in origin stories and understanding what events and experiences have happened to help inform who you are today. So it informs you for your life. So Leeza, let's start with you. You grew up in the South, right? So would you say your upbringing has shaped your identity?
Oh, without a doubt. I'm a Southern girl through and through because when I grew up, it was, a yes, ma'am, no, sir kind of culture. The doors were always open, like for real. The ice sweet, the boiled peanuts were plentiful. And it was the kind of place where, it was hopeful and people were helpful. And someone's calling me. Sorry, we're done with that now.
Hello.
Now, if I could just keep my dog out of the conversation, we'll be really crazy amazing.
We love it. This
Katrina,
is real life.
it's such a great question because in the South where I grew up, we did all look out for each other and it was expected that you were to contribute to your community. That's just the deal.
That's fantastic.
Wow. So before I move on, I just wanted to, did you ever drink mint juleps? I just have to know.
Well, my mother did. My mother was the original Steel Magnolia, and my mother was the coolest, strongest, and yet most savvy kind of woman you would ever, sassy and sexy. And yes, so she would be known to have a mint julep and would ask you to join her. And several hours later, you all might be into other things.
Well, I feel like that. I'm jonesing for a mint julep right now.
Sounds good. Next time.
Right. So Wendy, let me ask you the same kind of question. You're a native of Los Angeles, an Angelino. So did you have or do you have specific memories of things happening when growing up that has shaped who you are as a person?
So Leeza, when you said that you were expected to give back when you were a child, that was the culture that you grew up in, that really resonated for me. I grew up in a Jewish family in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles. I went to a Jewish day school. My grandfather would often say, to whom much is given, much is expected. We were expected to give back as a family, and we did community service or tzedakah as a family. So I have very vivid memories of going to food pantries, of giving out water to runners at the first marathons, immigrant families who were getting amnesty when I was in high school that I volunteered at. We were really expected to pay it forward and give back. And my parents really lived those values. We had a Jewish family who had immigrated to the United States from the former Soviet Union, who our family adopted and we're still very close with, the Smorodinsky family. And so that culture of giving back was just part of my everyday growing up and part of what I knew was expected of me going forward.
I think you just started a whole new podcast called Crazy Amazing Families, because it sounds like your family was crazy amazing. That's incredible. That's quite a...
I have crazy amazing parents. Joan and Sid, my mom and dad.
Wow.
That's so interesting. I know a lot about Wendy and love her heart and love her service and her brilliance, her brain. She's an incredible mentor. But when you talk about your family connecting with and sort of still having these long-term ties, when I was in high school, my family had foreign exchange Takaki and Mamiko that lived with us. And my family stayed connected with them throughout the decades. Isn't that fascinating that we both have that?
No wonder we're friends.
No wonder.
That's really fantastic.
Awesome parents.
That's right. That makes all the difference. So here you are, Leeza, you're growing up in South Carolina and Wendy in Los Angeles, but now you're in Los Angeles, Leeza. You came from South Carolina to Los Angeles. You've had quite a successful career as a broadcaster. You've spent decades hosting, producing, and writing for shows such as Entertainment Tonight, Extra, and your very own talk show, Leeza. So wow, I've followed your career and it is amazing. So when you were young, what did you want to be when you grew up?
You know, I was lucky because my mom was the one that helped me figure out that I wanted to be a storyteller. And that was from the sixth grade on. So that was the label that she put on me, though, Katrina, in desperation, because we had a talent show at school and I had no talent. So my mother was trying to like get me to stop crying because she wasn't a big one for tolerating whining. And I was feeling really sorry for myself because, you know, my friends had all this amazing talent. She goes, "Oh, shush up, you have a talent." And I'm like, "What?" She goes, "You're a storyteller. So you just go up there, stand in front of the class and tell a story." Like she's like, "And get out of my room, go something else." But it stuck with me, and that was the label. And so from that moment on, I wanted to be a reporter, which I became, and became an anchor, and then I became a feature reporter, and then a talk show host, and it just kind of worked out.
Wow.
Wow. I got to say, Leeza, Katrina alluded to your career. Now that I think about that, thank you for sharing that story because it's totally evident in everything you do. And aren't we hardwired for stories? And you do it in an amazing fashion. Wow, that's really cool. So Wendy, same kind of idea. Okay, you decided to become a lawyer. What led to that trajectory for you? Was this all part of the plan, or was any of this a surprise to you? Or
You know, isn't it amazing that life doesn't always go according to the exact plans that we have? So, actually, my 8-year-old last night asked me what I wanted to be when I was his age. And I said I either wanted to be a teacher or a nurse. I think I had these very, I definite gendered ideas of what women could do. And he said, "Well, mommy, you run Beauty Bus. You sort of are a nurse. You're helping people." And I thought that was such an insightful thing for my little 8-year-old Tyler to say. So I went to law school partly because I didn't know what else to do. There weren't lawyers in my family. I was done with college. I didn't feel like I was done with my education. But I really did believe in law as a power to change people and impact lives. So when I was in college, I had a little bit of your Southern influence. Leeza, I went to Duke and got in some of my y'alls and my sweet tea. I really got excited about politics, and I worked on Dianne Feinstein's first Senate campaign, and then was an intern for her first year that she was in Washington. I spent that summer in Washington, D.C., and there were 6 women elected to the Senate. It felt very groundbreaking at the time.
Wow.
And I felt like if I went to law school, I could use those tools to really change things and make the world. And, I had really my dream job. I was helping Holocaust survivors get reparations. I felt like I was using the law as a really powerful tool. I thought like this was the job I would have for the next 30 years. And then my sister passed and life changed. And you sometimes go down paths that you never expected. I wouldn't change it for anything. But I certainly never thought that law school would lead me to running a beauty nonprofit, even wear makeup. So this is like a ridiculous place for me to be in my life.
I love that. Life is what happens when you're making other plans, right? It really is. So, it's just obvious. You both are such strong, intelligent, successful women with amazing families, really, that you came from. And in addition, you both had something happen that would change your life forever. And I know that a lot of people have what you might call definitive markers in their lives, where we hear people say things like, "Where were you on 9/11?" So with that idea in mind for you all, let's say, Leeza, starting with you, do you remember where you were when you first suspected that something maybe was wrong with your mom, something was going on different?
Oh, it's funny because the hairs on the back of my neck get all spine tingly when we even look back at those moments. They are defining, you're right. For me, Alzheimer's is such an insidious, kind of slow creeping dance with a stranger that there are signs along the way that I think as family members we want to ignore, we want to dismiss, we want to cover up for, we want to fix. For me, I knew something wasn't right about mom, but I thought she was an alcoholic. I said, mom's repeating herself. She's not taking care of her hygiene. She's being abrupt and rude, which was never anything that was her. And I said, we've got to help her. So I, being the middle child, a big brother who's a lawyer and my little sister, and I said, look, I was the one who was always going to be that instigator, that coordinator. And I said, we'll get her into Betty Ford. Let's just have an intervention. Let's help her. And I've said before that I wish that had been the problem. Not that I'm dismissive of alcoholics or any addiction, but you can live with an addiction. Wasn't that my mother was the one who finally gathered us up as a family and said, something's not right. I've paid this bill, the gas bill or whatever, 3 or 4 times. And she had seen her mother, my granny, deal with the same disease. So she forced us to get the diagnosis. And ironically, she felt better. And we all felt stronger ultimately after that.
Wow. That's a truth.
Yeah, 'cause it's like, it's not something you want to admit, or not admit, but you don't want to think that that's going to happen.
Right.
It just doesn't occur to you. So Wendy, same kind of an idea. So do you remember, and you alluded to this too, how trajectory of your life, but do you remember where you were and what you were doing when you first learned of your sister's illness?
Yeah, so I have 2 moments that really stick out for me. And the first is, so Melissa had got engaged in the summer of 2004, and then sort of through the fall wasn't feeling that well, right? But we've all gone through periods where we aren't feeling 100%. She'd been to doctors. She was in Boston and we were in LA. So we were talking to her. There was no FaceTime. So we knew she wasn't well. We knew, she was seeing some numbers. And then she started to go downhill fairly quickly and ended up in the hospital. And I remember I was going to be flying out to Boston the next day. And my brother-in-law at the time, Melissa's fiance, Dave, called me really late on Friday night after he'd had too much to drink and said, the doctor said that we're going to lose Melissa. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is ridiculous. I'm getting on a plane tomorrow. My parents are there. Like, we'll figure this out. And Melissa was intensive care unit at the time. She was having some trouble breathing. And I remember I went over to Dr. Rachel Narden, who is an amazing woman. And I said, Dave called me last night. He said this, what's going on? She just looked up at me and Melissa was really, really sick with the disease we probably couldn't overcome. Melissa had some sort of degenerative neuromuscular disease, something in the ALS family, although we never had a definitive diagnosis. ALS is really a default diagnosis. And I think science just caught up to giving what she actually had a name.
Coming up, confronting the worst case scenario for someone you love.
Hi, my name's Claudia. I'm from Durango, Colorado, and you're listening to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast with Katrina, Carlson, and Jefferson Denham. Thank you guys for the laughter and warmth you share with us and for shining a light on humanity with your incredible guests and their jaw-dropping stories. I love the podcast and I never miss it.
Hey, crazy, amazing humans. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts right now so that you're the first to know and you never miss our new episodes.
Right. And we're also on YouTube in case you'd like to see us and our guests at the Crazy Amazing Humans YouTube channel. That's where you'll notice, by the way, that Katrina's always having a great hair day. Me, not so much.
Okay. All right. Now back to the show. 2. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
All right. So Leeza, okay, so your mom gets the diagnosis. Did you know much about Alzheimer's prior to that? You mentioned your grandmother had it, but what do you wish people knew about Alzheimer's?
That's a big one because it is so dreaded. It's the only one of the top 10 diseases. It's number six in terms of killers, but it's the only one for which there are no effective treatments, therapies, certainly not a cure. The best we have is to sort of slow it down. But here's what I wish people knew, what I certainly didn't know. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So I wish people knew that there is still a relationship with the diagnosed loved one. It changes, but I think we have a tendency not to be present because we're so focused on making it better. Well, I'm going to fix it. And we're going to have another doctor. We're going to try new nutritional supplements, and we're going to do laughter yoga, and we're going to do, meditation, and we're going to walk in the rainforest. All those things are wonderful and they're worth pursuing. But what you sacrificed, what I sacrificed, was just spending time where you are now. That's hard for us without a diagnosis, right? So I wish people would wrap their heads around those who are forgetting should not be forgotten, and they are still able to participate. We have to join them in their world because they can't reach back out into ours. And so we spend all this time correcting, oh, Mom, I just told you that. Mom, don't you remember? No, Mom, Uncle Harry died years ago. There's no benefit to that argumentative combativeness. So, I wish people knew the benefit of what I call the therapeutic lie, the helpful fib, which is just to let them have their way, to let them be right, to know that when they're saying, well, I want to go home and I want to see Uncle Harry, instead of saying you are home and Uncle Harry's dead. Tell me what, maybe she's lonely. Maybe she wants to talk about home, bring out some pictures, divert like you would a child. So there are lots of things I wish people knew, but what I knew, what I wish I had known, is that the value I would ultimately get from being in silence with my mother, from brushing her hair, from putting lotion on her hands, the things, Wendy, that you do every day at Beauty Bus, that healing, that nurturing, that high touch, even on Zooms, the hugs we get by being connected. I wish I had known how meaningful that would be instead of dreading it, leaning into it a little bit more.
Well, that is so insightful. And I've honestly never heard anyone put it that way, Leeza. Thank you. I think that can be applied to so many things, to just be present and, let the person be in their world and join them. What a wonderful insight into how to help. Even just sometimes, just you could say that about some of the very elderly, So that is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Wow.
Leeza, what you said really resonated with me. I lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's, and it was so interesting because my daughter was in preschool at the time, and she and my grandmother had this amazing connection. They would sit and color together for hours. And Alexis was like, Bubby is the best at coloring. She doesn't go out of the lines. And they had the best relationship. And it was so different watching my mom, who saw her mom slipping away, and it was so painful for her. But for Alexis, she could just be totally present with her great grandmother and just love coloring and getting coloring tips from her. And it was such a big lesson for me about being present and accepting where someone who's on that Alzheimer's journey is. And everything you said just totally resonated for me. So sorry to divert.
No, I love that.
That's great.
Wonderful, Wendy. And so you have probably something along the same lines about when your sister was diagnosed, and what did you know about the disease, and what was her prognosis, and what do you wish you would have known back then?
Yeah, so unfortunately, ALS has a terrible prognosis. The life expectancy is 2 to 5 years. There are some exceptions, like Stephen Hawking's, who people know about. But really, everyone who gets diagnosed mostly is gone within 5 years. And it's a very isolated, difficult 5 years. You're losing the use of your limbs. You're losing the ability to speak. losing the ability to swallow, to eat, to communicate. But your brain is completely there. And so in some ways, it is such a cruel disease because you totally understand what's happening as your body is just failing to cooperate. I knew about ALS really through the Jerry Lewis telethon and Lou Gehrig. And it really is a disease that tends to affect older men. So for Melissa to have a diagnosis in that family as a young woman in her 20s just didn't really fit the stereotype and didn't fit a lot of the support groups and stuff that were out there because she was in such a different demographic. She had just gotten engaged. She was getting ready to get married. She was really starting her life. And so it's an incredibly painful, isolating journey as a family.
Well, I just have to echo what Katrina said earlier. Thank you for your candor and
Yeah.
how you're sharing, because really what happened to your family members could happen to any of us and any of our family members. So if you don't mind me asking, as the illness for your loved ones, and Leeza, I'll start with you, as the illness for your loved ones progressed, how did you and your brother and your sister cope? How did everybody cope in your family?
Differently. We each went to our own corners to lick our wounds. And I find that, we work with families so often who are at that turning point. And I think that's part of what we have to accept about each other is that we cope with stress and pain and grief very differently. I got over busy. I got on that. The place to hide for me was I'm going to stay up later. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to care more than anybody else. I'm going to be resourceful. I'm going to mine these opportunities. That was where I went. My brother went into denial. He couldn't bear to see what he always called the prettiest mom in school declining. My sister got very depressed and dark. And my dad the most social man I've ever known, would take a bottle of wine and his pictures of my mother, and he would close the door and just live in that. So we each came to reality or came to our new normal very, very differently. But I'll tell you what, everyone ultimately gets to the place. And Wendy, I'm sure you know this and have experienced it and have helped people get there too, is you can't do this alone. And we tend to feel we need to be so self-sufficient. I'm a great daughter. I'm a wonderful wife. I'm a caring sister. All those things that we think mean we have to show up bigger and better and stronger. Yes, you can go for that, but you need help. And I hear people say, well, I'm not a joiner. It's great that you guys do support groups, but I'm not a joiner. Okay, find the way that you can get nourished and feel protected and supported on your own, because otherwise, what happens with Alzheimer's caregivers is they often die before their diagnosed loved ones. On the whole, the average is you can sacrifice 10 years of your life because of compassion fatigue. So your loved one is declining more slowly than you are. And we may not be able to cure Alzheimer's, but we can really do a lot to fix that.
Wow. Something you just said, Leeza, which Katrina and I talk about all the time, and that's what we love doing about this podcast is highlight individuals, because not one size does not fit all. And I love how you articulated that everyone's going to process things differently. And Wendy, is that what happened in your family as well?
What you said resonated so much, Leeza. So actually, after Melissa passed, she had a dog, Charlie, who was a Welsh Corgi, and Charlie started to decline a couple of years later. And he was living with my parents, and my father felt like, to attribute to Melissa, he had to do everything he could to take care of Charlie. He took Charlie to doggy acupuncture. He got Charlie little wheels for his hind legs. He was running Charlie around the city, doing everything he could. He felt like he owed it to Melissa. And for my mom, seeing Charlie decline felt to her like, watching Melissa decline, and she felt like it was cruel and it was too much for her, and she felt like they should put Charlie down. And they were both coming from such different places, but really both with such a sense of love and a commitment to my sister. And so it was just such a visible example of two people having such different reactions and needing to find a way to respect each other and bring them together. I actually remember after Melissa passed away, my parents sat down and they said, "We want you to know we're going to stay together. We're committed to staying together." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I just lost my sister." Like, of course you're staying together. But the incidence of couples splitting up after the loss of a child is incredibly high, which I didn't know at the time. And my parents have an amazing relationship and an amazing marriage and are incredible role models for me. But the fact that they said that out loud, I was just like, what? Like, and I was 32 at the time. Like, I was, a young adult, but, this is incredibly, incredibly difficult on families. Melissa also found a lot of support in Judaism and in her faith. And every Friday night wanted to go to Shabbat services, which was not something that we necessarily did every Friday night. Growing up, we went some, but it was somewhere that she could go, and it was somewhere that she could connect with her spiritual higher power, with her God. And that was really meaningful. And I remember she was connected to a bunch of tubes, and she had some suction machines, and they were really loud. And the rabbi came over and I said, "I know the machines are really loud." And he said, "This is her temple." I'm going to start crying. Doesn't matter how loud they are. Like, we're so glad that your family's here. And so I think Melissa found a place where she could be at peace. And I think it helped all of us support her on that journey.
That is really, what a story, and how wonderful you had a community to help support. And, Leeza, so we heard a little bit about how Wendy had support around her. What was the kind of support you got during, because I feel that you all now have created organizations that are going to help support people. But when you were going through it, and you were at the beginning kind of looking for resources, were there any available at the time to tap into that helped you, Leeza, and your family?
It's hard to find those kinds of resources when you are overwhelmed with pain and when you're in that kind of a crisis. It literally shuts off a part of your brain that you think you're so, Wendy's got that lawyer's brain and she's very analytical and she can, but when you are deluged with emotion, you can't always find that skill set. And so it's really important that you let other people into your world and that you ask for that kind of help. I was hosting and producing a show called Extra at the time, and we would be done taping in the early afternoon, and I would whip my microphone off, and I would get, at that time, a little micro cassette recorder. Now I would just work in my phone, but I had this little mini recorder, and I would walk around where the set was, and I would cry, and I would talk into that thing, and it was therapy for me. That I would scream, and that helped to have an outlet. But I did reach out and get a therapist who helped me find ways to deal. I started journaling. I started meditating. I tried other things that helped me cope. It's not going to be the same toolbox for everyone, but their similarity is you do have to, I think, ultimately get outside of yourself. We have a mantra that we call breathe, believe, receive. And that's really important. The breathing part, when you're stressed, we tend to take shallow breaths and then our digestion shuts down and our brain's not getting enough oxygen and it builds on itself with a lot of other states of disease. And then the belief part, I love when you talk about your sister and her faith and how meaningful that is. For many people, believing in a higher power is so important, but just believing in love, which is higher power, I think, but believing in community, believing in unicorns or rainbows, it doesn't matter. Believing in something and having that hope is really important. The hardest part is this part, the receive. We love to give, we love to nurture. it's much harder when someone says, how can I help you or how are you doing? To give that honest answer and say, I am at the end of my rope. And to be able to say, how can you help me? Can you please come sit with mom for 30 minutes while I take a bath? To develop a skill set of asking for help is not intuitive to a lot of us.
Absolutely.
You know what? I love what you just shared too, because I think I personally, and anybody out there that's listening, it is no crime to ask for help and get therapy. I'm a huge fan of that. And I'm so glad you touched on that, Leeza.
Yeah.
And that's our common, when we start in a traumatic situation, as you are describing so articulately, there's so many emotions that are triggered when we go through something like this. So for you two personally, when your mom passed away and when your sister passed, did it feel, if you don't mind me asking this, did it make you feel alone, or did you feel more of a connection and a camaraderie with others that have been through something similar? How did it change how you look at life? And Wendy, I'll start with you.
Well, it made me even more grateful for my amazing husband, Eric. I think that grief is the price you pay for really loving someone dearly, right? If you don't have that incredible love and connection, then you don't grieve in the same way. And so, I really missed Melissa. I felt alone. I felt grateful for my friends and family. I always said, people say, there's nothing good you can really say. And that's true. There's no good thing, but there are so many bad things. And I felt like people said them all the time, right? Like, she's in a better place. God only gives what you can take. I'm like, no, I really think sometimes God gives more and you just have to rise up. I think that when people are well-meaning and try to be there, people now sometimes will even often say to me, I was thinking about Melissa, but I didn't want, to bring that up for you. And I think she's always in my mind, right? I'm so grateful when people bring her up, and it's not like all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I lost my sister. I totally forgot. How dare you bring that up? It is always comforting to know that people are remembering your loved one, are supporting you, or supporting your family. I don't think you can give enough to people who are grieving. They will be grateful. They may not always know how to manifest that, but they will always be grateful that you were there for them.
And Leeza, you mentioned that you felt a little bit alone, of course, when you're, processing everything, because only you are in that arena, even with people around you. Did you feel more of a connection with others who have been going through something similar? And I'm sure it changed your outlook on life, yes?
I do think it ups your empathy when you're vulnerable and when you are in that kind of pain, which is isolating. And you know what? You are alone. And that's probably the scariest part, is giving yourself permission to feel helpless for a minute, to feel broken for a second. I'm not a big believer in Hemingway's words of, the world breaks everyone. And, what is it afterwards? Some are stronger at the broken places. I think the world tests everyone. And I think that we have to be forgiving of ourselves. The F words that I call in my life, flexibility and forgiveness, have always helped. And if you can forgive yourself for saying, I'm just not getting out of bed today. I'm wallowing in my self-pity today. Okay, that's all part of your process. But, Wendy, I really appreciated what you said about, we've been on the receiving end of having that pain and receiving what people are saying. And also we're often those people to want to give something to someone who's hurting. And I think that fragility around relationship feeling over. When someone dies, the relationship is not over. Their body is gone, but the relationship, I walk in relationship with my mom every day. She makes me laugh and inspires me, and I remember crazy stories, and I'll share things with people. The healing thing I think that we can offer our humanity to others is the way we live forever is in the hearts of people that we loved, right? So those people continue to tell our stories. And that's the thing that my mother said to me when she was diagnosed finally. And I'm like, well, Mom, I I don't know what to do. What can I do for you in the early parts of the disease? And she said, honey, you're a storyteller. And she said, so you've told other people's stories all your life. That's how you've made your living. Now this is your story. So all you do is tell it. Just go tell it and make it count. And I think that's true for all of us when we remember those that we've lost, when we open that door for people who are grieving. That's like salve on a wound.
Wow. Telling the story. That is, being a storyteller, what a perfect career you've had for that. And to think that you could apply it, the way you have both taken your difficulties and turned them into something that you have such empathy and understanding. You've really thought through all of this. It's really inspiring. I'm really blown away by the way you both have perceived everything and translated it into something positive.
When we come back, turning pain into purpose.
Hey y'all, this is Bruin from Charlotte, North Carolina. You're listening to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast with Katrina, Carlson, and Jefferson Denham. I love this show. I hope you do.
If you have any questions or comments about today's episode, please make sure to write us at crazyamazinghumans@gmail.com.
Part 3, From Heartbreak to Hope. I think it's fair to say that the pain you experienced served to ignite your passions for the projects you both started. And so I guess we should kind of transition into, Leeza, do you want to tell us about Leeza's Care Connection and how you dedicated your efforts based on a promise you made to your mom?
My favorite thing is to look at this genesis. I'm like Wendy. I didn't, knowing how to run a nonprofit is not something that I was training to do or was even interested in doing. And I just figured, okay, I'm going to open the door and I'm going to know that I'll have access to the information to figure it out. Because my burning desire was, my seat at the table was, how can I create in the world what we wish we'd had? And we wanted a place where we felt seen. That's the commonality of the human experience. And especially for caregivers, if you ask a caregiver, how are you doing? 8 times out of 10, they're going to start talking about how their loved one's doing. Well, we went to the doctor and he's not so great today. They told us he's going to have another round of chemo. It doesn't even occur to them to see how they feel. So we wanted to create a place where we could help caregivers call on their courage and summon their strength for a very long journey, where they would recognize that you don't have to give up your life because you're caring for someone you love who is sick or dying.
Right. That's your book, Take Your Oxygen, right?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Because better care for the caregivers translates to better outcomes for the care receivers. And so that's a big part of what Wendy does at Beauty Bus. It's a big part of the caring experience, is giving people not only permission, but the urgency of having to nourish themselves and staying strong.
Well, you mentioned the Beauty Bus. So Wendy, tell us about, I want to get on the Beauty Bus. Let's all get on the Beauty Bus.
Jefferson.
So tell us about the Beauty Bus, how your sister was the catalyst to launch it. By the way, I believe you refer to the Beauty Bus as your third child. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So I was actually pregnant with my daughter, Alexis, when Beauty Bus saw our first client. So literally, Alexis and Beauty Bus are exactly the same age, currently about 11 and a half. So, Leeza, everything you say is so true for me as well. Our family, Melissa was sick. Melissa was a total girly girl. She was the head cheerleader in high school. She loved a good day at the spa. And so when she was sick, she really still wanted to get her hair done, her makeup done, her nails done. But this was a time before Drybar, before beauty apps. And it was really difficult to find people to come to the house. It was very expensive expensive. And it was also hard to find people who were willing to take on the emotional difficulty of being with a young person who was sick. And so we found some amazing people who did her hair, did her nails, did her makeup. And this was at a time when Melissa was getting ready for her wedding. So it should have been, this incredibly fun, exciting time in her life, planning the wedding and planning bachelorette parties. And instead, she was in and out of hospitals and meeting with doctors. And I basically took on what for me was really the gift of giving her this dream wedding. She actually walked down the aisle at her wedding on a ventilator, and she passed about 6 months after she and Dave got married. So a couple of years after Melissa passed, we had this idea to bring that same gift to other families. And we honestly thought we would start really small. We thought we would always stay really small and just ask our hairdressers to occasionally on the weekend do a haircut, and maybe we'd do 4 or 5 a month, and it would really make a difference. We actually originally thought there must be an organization out there that did it, and maybe we could join their board or help plan an event, but there was nobody. This was 11 years ago who was doing this. So we started our own. My advice to anyone who's thinking of starting a nonprofit is find a nonprofit that does something similar and work with them, because it is a lot of work to start a nonprofit. My husband joked, like, how about you start a for-profit in honor of Melissa? But we started Beauty Bus, which I am very grateful for, and Eric has been incredibly supportive of. But Leeza and I met at a banking seminar for nonprofits. This is not all sexy and exciting. So Beauty Bus was really born because there were no other nonprofits doing it, and because our family wanted to honor Melissa. And as we started, we sent out one press release just sort of for fun, and every local news station wanted to do a story. We didn't even have that many clients. So I think we had 3 clients and we had 5 stations who wanted to do stories. So we knew we were on to something. Fast forward 11 years, we've done over 25,000 free services. We've touched the lives of countless families. And it's been so rewarding for our family to meet those families at these times that are the most difficult and to really be there. Beauty Bus does free services for the patient, but also for the caregiver. And like Leeza was saying, I think that the work that we do for caregivers is in many ways even more important than what we do for the patients. When they're at Beauty Bus, they're clients, like you would be in a salon. We don't call them patients. Taking care of the caregiver, giving them their oxygen, giving them what they need to move forward another day, be able to fight their disease, and for their caregivers to be able to continue that caregiving is really what Beauty Bus is all about.
That's amazing. Both of you with the caregivers. It is so important, and oftentimes they're forgotten. So you guys make sure you hit the full spectrum of those people involved with these illnesses, and that's fantastic and so important. And I know so many of our listeners are going to want to know even more about how to reach you all and your services, the ways they can utilize your services. So maybe we should start with Leeza explaining some of that, and maybe how you've gone from one method of doing that to now what you're doing during the pandemic might look a little different. So however you want to explain. Leeza, do you want to start with the Care Connection?
We are at leezascareconnection.org. And at the website, you can access a variety of resources, information, empowerment, and community. So if you are just stumbling around and you think, I don't know what I don't know, right, welcome. Get into our lifeboat, because most people at the beginning of this journey have no idea what's ahead of them. And you just kind of keep climbing, even though you can't see that top of the staircase. So our entire effort is to nourish mind, body, soul, spirit, these family members who are caring for someone that they love. But they need practical things too. They need to get legal support. They need to get diagnosis. They need to get in-home care and tub rails and walkers and all of those practical things. So we have found that we have what we call HUGS ambassadors, and HUG stands for Helping You Grow Strong. And the HUGS ambassadors are people who've been there. Maybe their loved one has died. Maybe they're in the final stages of their caring. They offer their expertise to people who are new to the path. So whether it's a webinar or Facebook Live or a virtual support group or one-on-one counseling, we'll help you hook up your technical connections if you're not that savvy with it. Whether you need to be connected to an attorney or someone to help you with supplements, medication, diet, we want to be that hub where we can kind of send you out to resources in your community. So we have the West Coast where I live now and the East Coast where I grew up. Those are our two bricks and mortar hubs. And then anybody from anywhere can certainly access us, and we can give you handoffs in your community to help you feel more resourceful on your journey.
That's incredible. So people just go to, can you say the website again?
It's Leeza's careconnection.org, Leeza.
Right, leezascareconnection.org. That's fantastic. And Wendy, do you want to talk about Beauty Bus and how people can utilize your services?
Thank you so much. So we are at beautybus.org. And we are located in Los Angeles, but now in this crazy virtual world, we are national. So Beauty Bus in normal times goes into people's homes and goes into hospitals and does free hair, makeup, nails, facials for patients and for their caregivers. And we also give bags filled with tons of full-size products so that the pampering can continue after we're done. And Leeza's Care Connection is one of our amazing partners, and there's nothing like seeing those caregivers of Alzheimer's patients come in and have a day where they pamper themselves and get hugs from Leeza and leave with a full bag of products, seeing the smiles on the faces and creating that sense of community is really what Beauty Bus and Leeza's Care Connection are all about. We pivoted very quickly when the pandemic hit and started offering our programs virtually online. So we've been doing hair braiding and makeup lessons and at-home facials all throughout Los Angeles. We have 16 hospital partners from City of Hope to Children's Hospital Los Angeles, USC. But we also have been able, because of everyone's online, to connect with national nurses through DaVita Dialysis. We've worked with a group of child life specialists at the Cleveland Clinic. We've did holiday makeup and facials with groups of teens at Children's Hospital Colorado. We had an experience where we were able to bring Leeza's LA and South Carolina community together and did Hollywood glam makeup online. So we've been able to create these experiences. We also have at Beauty Bus really been celebrating our frontline healthcare heroes and have been bringing bags of beauty to hospitals throughout Los Angeles. Every week, we're delivering hundreds of bags to hospital workers as a thank you, as a little pick-me-up, since we can't see them in person, just to let them know how grateful we are, how much we value them. There's a bunch of items that they need, but there's also some fun glitter and cool nail polishes and, nurturing moisturizers, just as a small token to let all of those healthcare heroes, everyone in the hospital, from the doctors and the nurses to the cleaning staff and the x-ray techs and the phlebotomists and the people working in the cafeteria who are keeping our hospitals running and really our communities safe. One of the things that this pandemic has really brought out is that all of us right now are caregivers, right? We're staying home, we're wearing masks to protect the most vulnerable people in our community. And we all really have a sense of the daily lives of clients of Leeza's Care Connection and of Beauty Bus, that isolation, that feeling of being home, that feeling of, not being able to connect with people. This pandemic has really put all of us in that situation. But for families who are experiencing illness, it's just infinitely more,
Yeah,
right?
another
They
level.
had all of those feelings, and now there's this, increased sense of isolation, which is really why you guys started this amazing, Crazy Amazing Humans podcast, to bring us together and to bring some hope and to bring some light.
Right. We are connected. And that is something that you're right. Katrina and I purposely want to make sure we remind people of that. There's one thing, Wendy, I just wanted to, Katrina and I we do our research, right? And so we've been stalking both of you in the kindest possible way, not creepy at all. But Wendy, one thing that I really, when we were watching a video on your website, there was someone who was a client. And now she is volunteering. And I'm sure that's what's happening with both your organizations. They feel so moved, I'm sure, that they want to be more involved in it. I think that's powerful. I think that's a great testimony to what you are doing in the public square. So let's face it, we have, or we're going to face trauma in our lives. I'm talking to my audience, but anybody, to myself too.
Yes.
We're going to lose loved ones. And it's about what do we do with it? So you two made a choice to use your experience as a springboard for doing good. You took tragedy and you turned it into a legacy of love in memory of Leeza, your mom, and Wendy, for your sister.
Right. And, as you said earlier, Wendy, not everyone can start a nonprofit, start an entire organization like Leeza, you have so beautifully, and you too, Wendy, that, but I'm sure you have these people who have volunteered with your organizations, who've had similar experiences to yours. And this kind of keeps the paying it forward going. And that is what Crazy Amazing Humans is about. It's a crazy, amazing way to turn tragedy into something positive. So we just want to thank you, Leeza and Wendy, for opening your hearts and sharing your stories with us on this podcast, because I was inspired before, and now I am even more inspired by your stories now that we've gotten to really dig into them. And the service and the care that your organizations are doing for so many is just, you don't even know how it gets passed forward. So the way that you all meet people right where they are, wherever they might be going, whatever they might be going through, right? And you remind them that they are beautiful, that they are seen, that you help them feel loved. And we just can't thank you both enough for the work you've been doing for quite a while now. And just want all of our listeners to know about that, and to know that about the two of you who are definitely crazy amazing. Thank you for being with us.
I can see it's beautiful. Suddenly you make me feel like I'm beautiful. Suddenly you make me feel like I'm beautiful. I can see the sunrise light up the world. I can see it's beautiful. Suddenly beautiful, suddenly beautiful.
So that's our podcast. We want to thank Leeza Gibbons and Wendy Marantz Levine for inspiring us by the ways in which they were able to turn their heartbreak into hope. If you've enjoyed today's episode and you think it would be meaningful and helpful for someone you know, please be a crazy, amazing human and let them know about us.
A couple of quick reminders. Make sure to subscribe to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We've also filmed the podcast, so you can check us out on the Crazy Amazing Humans YouTube channel. Make sure and leave comments. We love to hear what you're thinking.
Absolutely. And most of all, we want to make sure to thank you for being with us today. Remember that every little kindness has the potential to create crazy, amazing human experiences, one person at a time.
And as always, this week, we want to encourage you to find one thing that you can do to extend kindness and love in the world. I'm Jefferson Denham.
And I'm Katrina Carlson. Stay healthy, stay connected, and we will see you next time right here on the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast.
I want you to feel, I want you to feel something crazy, crazy, amazing.
If you have any questions or comments about today's episode, please make sure to write us at crazyamazinghumans@gmail.com.